Testing, testing.
I haven't seen him yet.
I think the big thing to keep in mind.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. What a great crowd. Where did George Soros find all these paid protesters? It is so good to see you. I am your Congressman, Jared Huffman, and thank you. And I'm so pleased. This is a joint production with your new Assemblymember, Chris Rogers, here. It's pretty great to have an opportunity to have both your federal and state representative in one town hall, because so many of the things we work on, I promise, some of the things that you care a lot about are going to have both federal and state elements to them. So I think it really is value added for a good community conversation here today. Before we get started, I want to thank Mendocino College for hosting us today. And I know we've got a full house here in the room, but we're glad that others can join us too, because the city of Fort Bragg, Mendocino Television, and KZYX are also covering this. So we are grateful to them. Now, I'm going to say a few words, then I'm going to hand it off to Chris, and then we'll get to the good stuff, your questions and comments. But to get us started, I just want to say how glad I am to be back in circulation and doing town halls again. I love these. And I used to do a lot of them before the pandemic and everything went off the rails. But now that our politics are so normal again, we can get it going. And I've been doing a lot of these all over my district, every type of community meeting and gathering that I can for the last few months. I think it's a super important way for you to hear directly from your elected leaders, hold us accountable, ask us to explain the positions we're taking on your behalf, and then, of course, helps keep us connected, because hearing from you is incredibly valuable. I think we're going to have a lot of ground to cover here today. I know you've got a lot of concerns. And just in terms of the way this will go, once we make our remarks, we each have staff members with remote microphones that'll be kind of working through the room. And so those of you who want to ask questions or make a comment, raise your hands and we will circulate. We're not they're already up. Look at this. We're not censoring or filtering, but we may not get to everyone. We will do our very best in the time that we have. And we will ask everyone to please keep your comment or question to 1 or 2 minutes. You can say almost anything in 1 or 2 minutes. And just out of respect for everyone else, please do that. And, I know there's a lot of passion and interest here about all sorts of issues. I think we owe it to each other to be respectful of other speakers, to not interrupt them, to not shout them down. Let's at least do each other that courtesy, and I think that'll be a way for us to show the country what a good civil discourse looks like. But I do look forward to differing points of view here today. and can't wait to get started. Lastly, before we jump into some substantive comments, I want to acknowledge some officials who are with us here today. I'm so glad that Mendocino Supervisor John Hashak is here, and his colleague Supervisor Madeline Klein. Your Superintendent of Schools, Nicole Glentzer's here. Now, I believe we have 3 members of the Ukiah City Council. That does constitute a Brown Act violation, potentially. We'll be careful about that. But we have council members Juan Orozco, Vice Mayor Susan Scher, and Heather Chris. From the Fort Bragg City Council, Tess Albin Smith is here, and Lindy Peters as well. And then finally, from the town of Cloverdale, Mayor Todd Lanz is with us. So thank you all. Now we're going to jump into, did you want to jump in?
I was going to say, you also have Gary Wysocki front row.
Would you please clarify? You always miss someone in these
We also have former Vice Mayor for Santa Rosa, Gary Wysocki, in the front row.
Hey, Gary, good to see you again. We're going to be getting into some grim and pretty serious subject matter shortly. But before we do that, I want to acknowledge a little bit of good news. I think it's important to do that from time to time. And we just won a big win in Congress a few months ago for anyone who is a retiree on Social Security. You all already know what I'm talking about. If you spent part of your working career in a public pension system, let's say you were a policeman or a firefighter or a teacher, there was this terrible policy called the windfall elimination provision that dramatically reduced your Social Security benefits. Very unfair. I've been co-sponsoring legislation every year in Congress to get rid of it, and we finally did it. So, some of you have already gotten a very nice retroactive check from the Social Security Administration. I do want you to know that even though that check is coming to you in the year 2025, Donald Trump had nothing to do with it. This was signed into law by Joe Biden in early January. But it's just an amazing piece of good news. And you probably know about some of the transformative federal investments that we've been able to achieve despite the chaos in Washington. $15 million for a fish-friendly diversion that'll help make sure that this Russian River Basin has water supply reliability as PG&E removes some of its infrastructure. I'm sure we'll talk a little more about that subject with some of you here today. But that $15 million investment is critical to making sure that this region continues to have water. And it's on top of another $2 million that we got for the study and design of the facility. In a few days, I will be at a signing ceremony to finally launch a feasibility study about raising Coyote Valley Dam. And that, too, is an important part of the water supply future for this basin. It's happening because I was able to get $500,000 for the Army Corps to do this study, and you've got your local Mendocino Inland Water and Power Agency as well as the Lytton tribe from Sonoma County partnering as local sponsors on that. So I'm excited about that. County of Mendocino has gotten $31.9 million from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. This is for various transportation priorities, super important to keep that money flowing, keep those jobs flowing. And here at Mendocino College, $2.6 million, a grant that will cover a range of initiatives, including making sure that we retain first-year students, increasing the percentage of students completing core transfer projects, and a lot more. So one last piece of good news, and then we'll get to the heavier stuff. A few months ago, I was elected by my colleagues in Congress to be the top Democrat at the Natural Resources Committee. And that has been a long-standing goal of mine. I think it puts me in certainly an important position right now to fight against the drill baby drill agenda that we're seeing. But over the long term, I think it gives me a chance to really deliver more wins for this region on things that we all care very much about. I'm also excited that it was part of this generational change in the Congress. I took on a very senior member. You don't do that very often in Congress. And when I was able to do that successfully, a number of my other colleagues, including Jamie Raskin, who is now the top Democrat at the Judiciary Committee, stepped forward with challenges, and we are seeing a kind of long sought-after generational change finally in Congress, which I think is a good thing. But look, as important as all of that is, I know that most of you came here with things heavy on your mind about just this flood the zone chaos that's been coming at us from Washington, the blitz of executive orders, the wrecking ball of this shadow government led by Elon Musk, the so-called Doge group and what it's doing to federal agencies, this crazy tariff and trade war, which is crashing our economy and driving up costs for all of us. Experts say that these tariffs are going to lead to all of us paying over $5,000 annually in higher costs, and of course alienating us from our friends and causing chaos around the world. In the last 2 days, the market crash has been 25% of our GDP. We've never seen anything like it, and it wasn't a war or a pandemic that caused it. It was an unhinged and petulant president of the United States. So there is a lot to talk about, and if I were you, I think what I would want to know, does my representative in Congress understand this moment, and what the heck is he doing about it? And so I just want, with your indulgence, to tell you what I think is going on and where we are. I have really 4 specific concerns, and I've never been more worried about the future of our country, quite honestly. And the first concern is this lurch toward authoritarianism that I see happening in so much of what Donald Trump is doing. Just the lawlessness of it, flouting Congress, a Congress that is supposed to be a check and a balance on abuses of presidential power, right? The founders put Congress right up there at the top, Article 1, with all of these powers over the president. And this Congress thinks that it works for Donald Trump and is just surrendering all of that. So we are losing the ability to hold a president in check just at a time when we have a president who kind of thinks he's a king and wants to rule by edict and executive order and kind of dare people to stop him at every single turn. So this lurch toward authoritarianism is real. I see it happening in the retribution agenda against Trump's political opponents. I see it happening in the way he's going after the free press, going after judges in the judiciary, going after higher education and academia. All of these things places us very much in a constitutional crisis, unlike anything I think we've ever seen. So that's concern number 1. Concern number 2 is the chaos and, frankly, the incompetence that we're seeing from this Doge shadow government that has been set up without any experience in public service, without any experience in government, doing things that, frankly, is doing harm that will take us years and years to unravel, making all kinds of mistakes along the way. And make no mistake, it's not about waste, fraud, or abuse. In many cases, courts have had to come in and say, that's illegal, you can't do that. And they've just put all those same employees that they pretended to fire out on administrative leave, and they're continuing to pay them while these agencies kind of grind to a halt. This is about crippling government so that Elon Musk can then come in and try to replace these employees with a virtual federal workforce using his AI program. It's really disturbing, and if that wasn't bad enough, you've got the richest man in the world doing it. You've got a guy who now is ransacking through federal agencies with the president's blessing, and they're the same federal agencies that regulate his businesses, that make decisions about his huge federal contracts that are a huge part of his wealth. This is deeply corrupt. And it doesn't stop with Elon Musk. It extends to the Trump family, which has made billions on crypto schemes that have been endorsed and promoted by your government. And it includes all of these other billionaires that are bending the knee and currying favor with this administration. So that's my third concern, the corruption and the oligarchy problem that we're facing. And the fourth one is just the basic erosion of decency and American values right now. in our country. The fact that we are turning against democratic allies all over the world, making our friends into enemies, and at the same time embracing some of the worst, most despicable tyrants on the planet. This is not who we are. This is not our country. The way we're being encouraged to scapegoat and hate each other and fight with each other, we've got to be better than that. I've never seen anything quite like it, where there's a desire to inflict pain and suffering on people who disagree with you politically. We've always had spirited differences in this country. We've got a two-party system. Those differences are aired in ways that, can be very passionate. But I have never seen one party actually want the other party to be afraid and to suffer, and so much hatred and vitriol brought to what should be a constructive friction between the two parties in this country. Okay, so that's the problem statement. What the heck am I doing about it? I am doing everything that I can as a minority member of Congress with every tool I've got. And my staff and I are working harder than ever, because in addition to keeping the lights on and helping all of you navigate the problems with government that you continue to have, we know this is a moment where we've got to communicate better. People need to know what the heck I'm doing. So that's why I'm doing so many of these town halls. It's why I'm going into different social media platforms and doing stuff that, frankly, I probably just wasn't even built for, but I'm doing it anyway, because I know that people are afraid, and they're worried, and they want to know everything that I'm doing on their behalf in Washington. So I'm going to continue doing that. We'll talk more about the details, but in the meantime, I'm going to hand off to my friend, your new Assembly member, who's doing a fantastic job in Sacramento, Assemblymember Chris Rogers.
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank the Congressman for doing three things that not everybody does. One is, even though he's in the minority in Congress, he's still fighting. And I can't say the same about all of his colleagues. And I've been proud to have him as my representative, fighting for the causes that I care about and the values that I hold and that our region holds. I think we need to give him a round of applause. The second one is holding these town halls. We both represent enormous districts. My district in the state assembly goes from the city of Santa Rosa all the way up to Oregon. It's Sonoma, Mendocino, Humboldt, Del Norte, and Trinity counties. We have 3 very blue counties, and we have 2 state of Jefferson counties. And sometimes it makes things awkward having difficult conversations about water, about transportation, about climate change. And the Congressman is willing to have those and bring people together for an honest conversation, when most of his colleagues at this point have canceled their town halls because they've become too uncomfortable. And then the third is that he's including our local government partners, because nobody gets to do it alone. Whether it's our supervisors in Mendocino or our council members in Ukiah, the state government, the federal government, we are all talking about how we plug in together to be able to make the lives of the people we represent better. And I will tell you, every time the president tweets, it changes the calculus on what we need to accomplish at the state level. Whether it's new tariffs that are increasing the costs for folks in LA who just experienced a devastating wildfire to rebuild, or 300 shipments for our local food banks canceled with no notice, we have to scramble and figure out how to make sure that the people who are left behind get the resources that they need. So it really is a strong partnership. The state of California, we are projected, if you believe the LAO, to have a $60 billion deficit this year. That's prior to the LA wildfires. That's prior to the tariffs. That doesn't include any money in the budget for housing or homelessness. It includes an 8% cut to the CSU and UC systems. We're not going to allow that to happen. But that's what the governor proposed, and that's before we saw all of this chaos coming out of D.C. So we're working hand in hand with our federal partners to figure out what we can do best to try to protect people. And I'll give you one really salient thing that we are doing in our office. We have $100 billion in tax breaks that the state of California gives out every single year. Does anybody want to guess how much of that goes to poor people? 2%. So you've got the earned income tax credit, and you have the young child tax credit. And if we continue to see changes at the federal level that benefit billionaires, that benefit corporations, that hit our folks hard, we'll adjust our tax structure so that we can make up that difference to keep those services in place. I always hear from folks when I do town halls, why don't you just withhold our federal tax dollars from the federal government? I'm going to address it up front. So California is a donor state. We are the golden goose in the United States. We give $80 billion more per year to the federal government than we get back. We subsidize everybody else under investing in their communities. That's absolutely true. I can't withhold your taxes to the federal government. You deduct from your paycheck with your business. You'd have to change that. There's no mechanism where it rolls through the state of California. But what we can do is we can say, before we're going to cut Medi-Cal, before we're going to cut education, before we're going to make it harder for people to rebuild, we are going to change the tax code so that the people who are benefiting the most from the corruption in D.C. are the ones that we hit the hardest here at home. That's the best that we can do. And make no mistake, we're going to lead in California. The first thing that we did when we took office earlier this year was we passed $50 million in upfront spending, $25 million for the Attorney General to defend California's constitutional rights from the federal government, and $25 million to defend our immigrant community. And it's very simple for us. Even Justice Scalia believed that undocumented immigrants had due process rights. And what we are seeing from the federal government right now is unidentified people wearing innocuous clothing, driving cars that are unmarked, grabbing people, and disappearing. And that's unconstitutional. It's harmful to our communities. And California is going to stand up and push back on that from the federal government. And then as it pertains to our civil liberties, I've gotten a number of emails from people who are saying, why are you wasting money suing the federal government? And here's what I'll tell you. In Trump's first term, California sued his administration 120 times. We won over 70% of the time, and it brought more money back to California that he was illegally withholding than it cost us to sue him. And I'll stop there because I know folks have a number of questions. And all I'll say is this partnership between your levels of government, this conversation between the public and us is really important because the march towards authoritarianism relies on people thinking that they have no hope and people thinking that they have no way to push back. And you do. Your voice matters. We're seeing the impact. We're seeing the impact in swing districts and folks who are getting really nervous about what their futures look like because the things that they have signed on to do, the things that they have abdicated to the president are harming their people, and that they understand that in a democracy like the United States, people will rise up and push back. So thank you for being here.
If the microphone just starts roaming through the crowd, so please, it may feel weird to have somebody else hold it, but there's an important reason why we do it. And so we've talked about 1 to 2 minutes. You can all help with that. If folks have a hard time staying within 1 to 2 minutes, you can sort of do the Academy Awards thing. You can start like a little bit of light applause to encourage them to kind of move it along. All right, let's go over here.
Mr. Huffman, you have said you may have had 4 concerns, but I have one concern, and that is water. The chaos you have created by removing our water, the backbone to these counties' main industry, agriculture. Our lives, our values all flow from our water. In the name of Elk, you have forced 12 families off of their land in Point Reyes, and now you are supporting the removal of the Potter Valley Project, which according to CDFW biologists require a 90% slaughter of the existing elk herd due to a lack of feed And also, it will remove vital breeding grounds for the surrounding elk herds in hope of salmon recovery. That is not a guarantee, just a hope. How can you be comfortable with stripping water away from 600,000 of your own constituents? And in the Sonoma Water Facilities Assessment, Alternative E1 satisfied all key factors but failed to meet NGO goals. Why are you not pushing for the alternatives that do not satisfy the key factors? Why are you aware that you are elected by your constituents and not the NGOs? I'll repeat this again. Over 600,000 of your own will be without water. When will you conduct a town hall in Potter Valley, the community that will be most impacted by your decision to remove the project?
Okay.
The feasibility study has been done on listening to numerous.
All right, I appreciate the question. This is a question about PG&E's decommissioning and surrender of the Potter Valley project. So I'm going to speak to it, and I know there are people in this room who have strong opinions about it and who don't agree with me about it, but I'm going to just answer all your questions. First, I got to unpack some stuff, because let me just tell you, an issue that is super vital to our region, to our environment, to folks in both the ELN Russian River Basin really should not be political, and it should not be politicized, but there has been a fire hose of disinformation and conspiracy theories circulating about this. It's being circulated for very political reasons by very political people. And I just have to respectfully point out that an awful lot of mistruths were just said in the posing of that question. Yes, there are 600,000 people in the North Bay that get some of their water through the Russian River system. No one is talking about cutting off the water to 600,000 people. Nobody I know thinks that that is a good idea. I certainly don't. I've been working for 8 years to get folks in both basins engaged on this subject because I knew change was coming. This 100-year-old hydro project was very likely going away, and you could see it years ago, and I saw it years ago. And that's why I engaged a very inclusive ad hoc community process that included folks from all different perspectives, including right here in Mendocino County, including 2 of your previous county supervisors from the Potter Valley, including your water managers up and down the Russian River Basin, to make sure both sides started talking to each other, so that if PG&E pulled the plug on this thing, which we could all see was a possibility because they were losing $6 million a year on this antiquated hydro project, and that's before they discovered the seismic risk. That means they've had to lower storage in Scott Dam. But all of these facts get lost in the politics that is just coming at us fast and furious all of a sudden from certain folks. So look, PG&E offered all of this up for sale several years ago. Nobody wanted it. Nobody was dumb enough to buy a project that you lose $6 million a year on, and that was before they discovered the seismic risk. I met with some PG&E hydro engineers just a few days ago and asked them straight up, because some of these right-wing influencers are out there saying, oh, the seismic thing is just a conspiracy hoax. I asked them straight up. And the engineer who's in charge of their whole hydro portfolio said, this is the one dam that keeps me up at night. It's a very real seismic risk, and if you wanted to hold on to that dam and make it safe, you would be spending many more millions of dollars a year in money that nobody has. So look, they tried to give this thing away. Nobody wanted it, and we are now way down the road where they are under a federal FERC order to decommission and remove infrastructure. So it's a moment of change and a moment of peril for those of us in the Russian River Basin if we don't work cooperatively with the folks in the Eel River Basin. And the good news there, folks, and you know, Chris Rogers and many of his folks in Sonoma County have just done great leadership on this. We have a historic agreement where stakeholders in both basins support a continued fish-friendly diversion into the Russian River that can meet the water needs of the Russian River Basin stakeholders, all of us here, and I'm one of them, right? I'm on the Russian River side of this system. So you think I'd want to cut off my own water? I don't think so, but we have a historic opportunity to do this in a way that can work. Right now, you're getting a trickle through the Potter Valley Project, because PG&E hasn't made power or diverted the historic amounts of water in years, and they're never going to again. So if you fight about this for 10 or 20 years, or you try to blow this thing up, that trickle that's coming into Lake Mendocino right now is all you're ever going to get. But if we come to the table in good faith and support this win-win two-basin solution, you'll get a lot more than that. You'll get way more than we've been getting for the last few years, and we've got a few years to plan and be smart and improve flood management and improve our ability to store some of this water in the ground in various places. And it can be actually a lot more water than we've been getting in recent years. So that's what I'm doing about this, and it doesn't make for good conspiracy theories or good politics, but I think it's pretty darn good water policy for this region. I'm very proud of it. One last thing. I mentioned that in a few days I'll be at a signing ceremony at Lake Mendocino because we are going to raise Coyote Valley Dam. And that's one of the things, that increased storage is going to make all of this work so much better. It's a huge priority. I'm dedicated to protecting the water supply for this region. I always have been. That's why we call it a two-basin solution. And I promise you that if you weed through the hysteria and the conspiracy theories, you'll find facts that very much back up everything I'm telling you. Chris, do you want to?
Yeah. And I want to say, first of all, I know there's a couple of folks from the Mendocino Farm Bureau here. I had a chance to meet with them today and just want to thank them for the ongoing conversation. I mentioned that I serve on the Budget Committee, specifically the committee that is working through the Prop 4 implementation that you all voted to pass and that the state of California passed just this last November. There's $10 billion there with different categorical funding, but some of it is for better water storage solutions. So we will be building out what that criteria is. And I'm happy to work with local folks on projects that they are proposing to try to meet that need. What we know that this comes down to is making sure that folks feel comfortable about how much water they have and when they have it, right? And so working with local jurisdictions to find funding, to advance projects, and to make sure that you have restoration work that's happening is going to happen. And I look forward to working with the Congressman on it.
Hi, Leslie Manta with Mendocino College. I teach math here and serve as the president of our union, full-time faculty union, and also serve on the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges. So first I'd like to welcome you to Mendocino College. Thank you for coming and listening to your constituents, making yourself available, and also for representing us in Washington and Sacramento. As an educator and as someone who tries to be a decent human, I am very concerned about the erasure of contributions of women, ethnic minorities, LGBTQ+ folks, and persons with disabilities that is happening at the federal level in favor of the recognition of only straight, white, likely Christian, cisgendered men. The fact is that this isn't even the worst that is happening to those of us who are not in that narrow demographic group, and this is of great concern. Congressman Huffman, I know that you are fighting this administration on a lot of fronts right now. Assemblyman Rogers, thank you for co-authoring H.R. 21, recognizing a Transgender Week of Visibility, pushing back against hate, and fighting to ensure that everyone has the right to be themselves. My question for you both, how will you continue to work to support diversity, equity, and inclusion policies at both the state and federal levels, including protecting educators' academic freedom to teach our courses in a manner that contributes to our students' understanding of the contributions that have been made by those whom this administration seeks to erase?
Thank you. Thanks for that question. I'm sure we each have something to say about that. I'll just start us off from the federal side. So I am opposing everything that you just described. I think it is a very dark turn into these culture wars that are so deeply unproductive, that do not bring us together or do anything to improve any of your lives. I promise you, transgender athletes did not just crash the stock market. And they're not wreaking global havoc around the world. A petulant president with really bad judgment and bad politics is causing all of that. So we're going to push back in every way we can. Diversity, equity, inclusion, these are like good values To me, this is like obvious decency, sort of evolution stuff. And the fact that it's being vilified and in such a cartoonish way, right? So these federal employees are being told to stop the vital work they're doing in every agency of the government and start combing through all of their websites and their documents looking for little trigger words. And Elon Musk is having his algorithm crawl through all of their documents and emails looking for those trigger words. And then you end up like removing photos of the Enola Gay because a trigger word made someone uncomfortable, or deleting something from the Department of Defense's exhibit on the Tuskegee Airmen or the Navajo Code Talkers, or any number of other things that these sort of thought police in the MAGA world thinks is inappropriate now. So look, we're just going to fight it with everything we've got in every way we possibly can. We're doing it in the courts. I'm doing it with the limited tools that I have as a minority member in Congress, but we're talking about it all the time. And I'm so grateful that these terrible values, this terrible politics, does not have to be ours here in this community or here in the state of California. And that's where Chris comes in, because the state has been holding the line in a really wonderful way on all of this.
Yeah, I really want to thank you for the comment. I was very proud to be on HR 21. It's one of my personal values is making sure that everybody has the right and the ability to be who they want to be, and feel like way too often we see othering happening where people are offered up as the reason that your utility rates are too high, or that rent is too expensive, and really it has nothing to do with it, but all it ends up doing is getting us divided while billionaires are making more money, right? And particularly as it pertains to the trans community, what we saw was billions of dollars in an election to attack one specific group. And we know that it could have been any of those groups that you mentioned. And it has historically been many of those groups who were othered and who were blamed, and we were told that we needed to hate that person because of issues that were completely out of their hands. And California is going to continue to push back on that. We are going to make sure that we have resources available to folks in our communities, because we also know that having the right to something doesn't mean that they have access to something as well. But I appreciate the question. We'll continue to fight for it. And you certainly, if you looked at that resolution, what you should have seen is that almost the entire legislature ended up supporting it as well by the time we were done. And so we don't stand alone in California, but we certainly stand as a beacon.
Thank you, Congressman Huffman and Assemblyman Rogers. My name is Julie Beardsley. I'm past president of SEIU 1021, and like many in this room, I have been horrified to see what's happening to our democracy, to see people being spirited away to some horrible prison in El Salvador. And all I've seen so far is Cory Booker and Representative Green standing up. What are you doing to stop this?
Thank you. And yeah, I thought Cory Booker was heroic with that filibuster. And look, despite the fact that, you know, on any given night, you're only going to see maybe one or two people on your cable news feed or on your social media feed, I promise you a lot of Democrats are in the fight camp right now, and I'm one of them. I'm doing it in every way I possibly can. We had a shadow hearing. I can't have actual hearings because I'm in the minority, but as the top Democrat at Natural Resources, I held a shadow hearing just 2 days ago on all of the havoc and the cuts at NOAA, which some of you know is an agency within the Commerce Department that we depend on for little things like weather data that makes it safe for all of us to get on airplanes, oceanic safety and maritime safety so that our ships don't run aground, so that our Defense Department doesn't run nuclear submarines onto reefs that weren't properly mapped. I mean, this is such mission critical stuff. And over 1,000 NOAA employees were just summarily fired, and they're talking about another 1,000. And this is another example where the courts have come in and said that's illegal, put them back on the job. And this stubborn administration said, nope, we're going to put them all on administrative leave and continue to pay them, while the agencies are crippled and grind to a halt. So I am taking things like that are within my jurisdiction at Natural Resources, trying to shine a bright light. I'm having town halls all over the place. I'm doing more media and communications than I've ever done. I'm not AOC. You know, I don't have millions and millions of Instagram followers, but within my modest ability, I'm trying to dial it up and do everything I can. I am absolutely in the fight camp in this moment, and I'll do everything I can do to fight this for you. Now, let me go to Chris. Yeah, I'll be at 2 rallies tomorrow. Tomorrow is a National Day of Action, okay? If you didn't know about it. So I'll be at 2 rallies, and I'm sending staff to a couple of others, and it won't be the last time. I will be peacefully taken to the streets with all of you, I'm sure, many, many times in the weeks and months ahead.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, California's already put our money in the game. We've already stepped up. We're funding the Attorney General. One of the things that went under the radar during the election was that Rob Bonta was already preparing legal briefs for the things that we saw as threats that Trump was saying, things that he was tweeting about. And so those have been ready to go. And the moment that we see something that's going to harm our constituents, he files the lawsuit right away. And so far, every single lawsuit that's been resolved that he has filed, he has been successful on.
Just one more note on that, because the fight in the courts is such an important part of how we're going to hold these illegalities and these abuses in check. And California is really leading, but so are state attorney generals all over the country. And members of Congress are supporting those litigation efforts. I've been meeting with state attorney generals for months, going back to last year, because I saw a lot of this coming with something called Project 2025. And I created a congressional task force, the Stop Project 2025 task force, at a time when no one had heard about Project 2025. We were able to at least lift it into the national conversation and to start working with some of these groups that are now just doing heroic legal work and winning most of the time, by the way. We've got 130 plus lawsuits that have now been filed. There have been over 70 that have been pausing or halting or overriding various actions by the Trump administration. So it's a little bit like the batting average that Assemblymember Rogers described in the first Trump term. This guy just does stuff in complete disregard for the law and dares the system to stop him. We are working hard to be part of that stop.
Hello, my name is Maria Avalos Fuentes. I am one of your constituents, a parent, as well as a first-generation Mexican American. So last month we had federal agents, part of a federal special response team that caused anxiety and fear for our Latino community. Latinos make up 25% of our community in Mendocino County. Our community quickly mobilized as well as spread many rumors. So I do want to thank your office, Jared Huffman and Jez, for responding to my calls asking for transparency around whether these were ICE sweeps or not. So I just want to request for additional transparency around federal activity in our community and ask what will be done to ensure that ICE sweeps are not happening to pick up community members with no criminal backgrounds in our communities to keep families together, and so people are not afraid to show up to their appointments, to send children to their schools, and to show up for work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thanks for recognizing my staffer, Jez Anderson, right there. We are here as a resource for this community, so if you hear rumors about ICE raids or any number of things, call us up, and we'll do our best to just get good information for you. And of course, we want to connect people with the groups that are protecting them legally. It's very important that everyone know your rights in this moment. But honestly, the Trump immigration purge is just getting started. They have promised the biggest mass deportation that the country has ever seen. And we have not yet seen it. We've seen high-profile, very theatrical things like the disappearings that Assemblymember Rogers referred to, like this black site down in El Salvador where they say that we have Venezuelan gang members, but they won't show us actually who's there. They won't provide the due process so that we can make sure that, you know, only violent criminals are being deported. So we've got a lot that we're trying to track, and this second Trump administration is far less cooperative than the first Trump administration. I never thought I would be nostalgic about the first Trump presidency. But the truth is, we could at least know there were certain rules the first time around. They wouldn't go into schools. They wouldn't go into hospitals and courthouses, or at least they said they wouldn't. And whenever someone was rounded up and detained, we could very quickly get information to the family and the community about that. We're not sure we're going to have that level of cooperation this time, but we're going to try very hard, and we're going to work closely with you on that. Chris?
Yeah, and this is always the least satisfying answer when we do these town halls, because California has already done what we can. We firmly believe in the state that in order for law enforcement to be effective, they have to have a good relationship with immigrant communities, and that everything that undermines that actually makes our community less safe than what the Trump administration thinks that they're accomplishing by deporting people. And we're seeing the spillover impact that isn't even necessarily directly related to ICE enforcement. To your point, we've heard from different nonprofits that are providing services to children in the community that they had somebody who was parked in a car in their parking lot, and it was an unmarked car. Families didn't know if it was an ICE agent or not, and so turned around and didn't access those services. And that's harming children, and it's harming the community just off the specter of what is happening with these ICE raids. So we're doing what we can to provide legal services or to try to make sure that folks know what their rights are. But the state of California, unfortunately, can't tell the Trump administration how he has to go about these immigration enforcement actions. We're usually the ones that are left trying to pick up the bag after. But certainly more information is always helpful. And you all need to be loud. I mean, that's the reality of this, is until this starts to impact some of the Republican districts, those swing districts, the Trump administration is not going to pay attention. Our district, we have a congressman who already knows this issue, right? And so we need to be loud, and we need to get other people to be loud as well and say that this violates the Constitution and everybody has rights to due process in our country.
Good evening. I'm Janice Tim. I'm president of the part-time faculty union here at Mendocino College. I'm a proud CTA and NEA member, and as an educator, I'm very concerned about what the dismantling of the Department of Education means for our students. Two concerns specifically are the ability of students to access financial aid so that they can go to college, and at the state level, continue funding our community colleges. These are places where lives are changed every year through education, not just for people right out of high school, but for all ages, especially here in our rural communities. What can representatives such as yourselves, who may not be serving on education committees in your respective legislative bodies, do to ensure that students continue to have access to financial aid and community colleges have fair and equitable funding that allows us to fully meet the needs of our students in a system that has very diverse and unique needs from campus to campus?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually just met within the last 2 weeks with the chancellor for the community college districts to talk through specifically what the budget looked like in January and what we anticipate it's going to look like in May. As I kind of led with at the beginning, before I cut education, before I cut health, there are other priorities that I'm going to go after, right? Because I do firmly believe that education is that silver bullet that allows people to compete. It has enrichment for folks as they get older. And community colleges in particular have this niche that I think we can't lose in California, which is single parents coming back to get educated as they're currently working, workforce who can't take time off to get their education all in one go. There is a very real need for increased investment in community colleges, not a decrease as well. So I mentioned we're going to push back on the 8% cut that the governor has offered for the CSU and the CSU system, and that's without saying that we're going to sacrifice funding for the community colleges as well. We instead are going to lean in, and we've been talking about how to do things like increase housing opportunities at community colleges, supporting workers who don't get full-time benefits or full-time pay from community colleges, and how that impacts their ability to deliver in their communities. So we're working on it. I don't serve on the education committee, but I do serve on the budget committee, and I did have a chance to audit some of the education subcommittee meetings and sit at the dais and ask questions about it as well, and we'll continue to work with you.
So I'll just add a little bit to that. You know, higher education and K-12 education, the state is really the big player. So I think it's appropriate that the Assembly member led off there. At the federal level, what we mostly do in education, you know, you hear all this buzz about shutting the Department of Education and letting the states take the lead. The states already do take the lead. I mean, it's like something like 90% of K-12 education is all the state of California and Assemblymember Rogers' domain. At K-12, all we really do is special education and Title I, which is for the very poor, right? And those things are both really, really important. So what I'm going to try to do so that we can support the K-12 students that are, many of them, on their way to community college, is keep those programs funded, keep this administration accountable, because in many cases there's statutory law that says these things have to happen at the Department of Education, and we've got a president who thinks that he can just do an order and disappear the Department of Education. Move it all over to RFK Jr., who thinks that autism is caused by vaccines. I mean, that's not the guy you want in charge of special education. So we're going to fight that in every way possible. The big play at higher education federally is the Pell Grants and student loans. And, of course, they are proposing deep cuts and, you know, reprogramming of so many of those things. So we're going to fight it in every way we can. I had hoped that the attack on higher education, this anti-credentialism that we see in this administration, would spare at least community colleges, because, you know, it's not just about lifting people into four-year degrees at community college. It's about job training and workforce and lifelong learners and so many other things that are so vital. But as far as I can see, they're, you know, attacking them in just the same way, and we will fight it.
Hello, my name is Tekla Brose. I'm the Democratic Party Chair of Mendocino County. And I just wanted to ask you, I just heard about a bill coming into from Jimmy Panetta to restore the power to make tariffs to Congress. Mm-hmm. And I know that the Senate also just passed a bipartisan bill that would also do the same thing. What do you think are the chances?
Okay, it's a great question. Thank you. I mean, especially as we're all reeling from the economic chaos of these tariffs, as the whole world is reeling from them. Many of these tariffs were levied by the president under declarations of emergency, under emergency authority. And I'll try not to be too professorial about this, but it kind of goes back to Article 1 of the Constitution. All those great powers that our founders put in the Congress, not in the president, included trade. Trade is supposed to be Congress and not Donald Trump just sort of churning out executive orders. But over the years, we have granted by statute various emergency authorities to presidents. And this president has decided to take great liberties with those emergency authorities. I mean, he's declaring a national emergency. You know, apparently Canada is now our enemy, and we have a national emergency that requires all these crazy tariffs with Canada. So, under the National Emergencies Act, which I think is what the Panetta bill is all about, Congress has the ability to override a presidential declaration of emergency and stop tariffs that Congress disagrees with. It is, after all, Congress's constitutional power. One of the most disturbing things about the government funding bill that passed 2 weeks ago is that it tied the hands of the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives unilaterally surrendered its ability under the National Emergency Act to override tariffs. And that's why it's great that the Senate, on a bipartisan basis, just exercised its authority to override tariffs, but it won't go anywhere in the House until we undo that unfortunate thing that we did 2 weeks ago. And it's one of the reasons I was so upset with Chuck Schumer, to be perfectly honest with you. So, look, I am all for the Panetta bill. I am all for what the Senate just did. I'm all for anything that provides a check and balance of this lawless president and brings some common sense back into play. Do you have anything on tariffs you want to?
I mean, nothing but wit and sarcasm. Yeah. My personal favorite was not just learning that the president put a tariff on an island that only has penguins, but that it was a retaliatory tariff, meaning he thought that the penguins had already put one on the United States. Clearly in an emergency.
The penguins have been pushing us around for too long, right? So.
They were flippering us off.
Oh.
Thank you for being here, Congressman Huffman. Thank you very much. We all appreciate it. Speaking for myself and many of my friends, there's so many things that you do that we can really support. What we can't support is your stand on Gaza. I need to say two things about it.
Go right ahead.
Okay. First of all, every time I write you, every time I call, every time I hear you on, you talk about Israel has the right to self-defense. Yep. Genocide is not self-defense. $60,000, and that's not an accurate count. There's way more. Half of them children have been killed by weapons that we pay for. We pay for all those weapons. And you voted last April 24.6 or 26.4 billion in additional weapons to Israel with nothing. They didn't have any rules to follow. Just they could do it. And there's another bill that's happening right now that Trump is doing. So I want you to understand that maybe in the very beginning, Israel has the right to self-defense. This is not self-defense.
Yep.
It's not.
Yeah. Thank you.
One more thing.
Okay.
One more thing. Just one more thing. One more thing. And then I hear you, Congressman Huffman, talk about it being our fault that Trump is in office because we didn't vote for Harris. And that is so far from the truth. That is so far from the truth. This is a blue state. We could all vote our conscience here in that blue state.
Okay.
And we did. And the Democrats supported genocide as much as the Republicans.
Okay. I appreciate the question, and I'm going to do my best to respond to it. You're not going to agree with me on this. I mean, I have spent hours talking to people on both sides of this conflict, trying to find common ground and reason our way through it. When I, as a congressman, have to take my votes, I'm often not presented with a good and a bad choice. I'm presented with two bad choices, and I've got to pick from among them, and never has that been more true than with Middle East policy right now. So look, I deplore what's happening in Gaza. I agree with you. What's happening in Gaza right now is not self-defense. You could argue that for a time after October 7th of last year, there was self-defense, and I supported their ability to go after and eliminate Hamas. We have crossed way past that, and I absolutely deplore the way this war plan is being carried out. I have been a huge and fierce critic of the Netanyahu administration in Israel. I support the Israeli... Well, yeah, but I'm just answering your question now. Please give me a chance, right? I oppose the policies of the Israeli government. I oppose the annexation push that they are absolutely on in the West Bank and probably Gaza too. I oppose the way they have treated many Palestinians for many years, the bulldozing of homes, and I am on record on all of this. You can look it up. You don't have to believe me, okay? And the reason I have supported the continuation of aid to Israel is because I don't want to throw the people of Israel under the bus. And this is, well, this is where, I know it, this is where we have a disagreement. Because I have met with folks who believe there should not be a state of Israel. who believed that the 1948 creation of Israel was illegitimate, and I fundamentally disagree. That doesn't mean I support the current prime minister and the current policies, and I'm sorry if that's too much nuance, but this issue does not reduce to some simple binary. It just doesn't. And so what you will get, well, I don't think, what you will get from me is absolutely using whatever authority I have to push back on the Israeli government, but I'm not ready to discontinue aid to a country that will be annihilated without the support of the United States. All right, I heard you. You have been heard. Let's move on. All right, I'm going to say one more thing, and I hope you will just think about it, okay? I know that you have spent a tremendous amount of energy coming after me on this issue. I have been sued in court as part of a class action that got thrown out because it was meritless. I have had the protest. I've tried to engage reasonably and respectfully, but what you now have is an administration that is trying to remove 2 million Palestinians from Gaza and the West Bank. And Donald Trump openly talking about building condos and resorts in Gaza and greenlighting all of the terrible stuff that's happening right now. Now, we can criticize the Biden administration because they should have done more to limit the war plan. And I urge them to do more, and I push them to do more. And your statement that military aid comes with no strings attached is wrong. There are laws and authorities that the Biden administration could have used to pressure and constrain the use of those weapons, and I urged him to do it, and I was on record urging him to do it. So let's be careful about the facts as we try to wade our way through a very combustible subject. But it absolutely, all of this advocacy going after me and other Democrats who I guess were not perfect on this, has landed you with an administration that wants to get 2 million Palestinians out of the way so Trump can build condos. I'd say that's misplaced advocacy.
Good evening, Congressman Huffman and Assemblymember Rogers, and thank you for coming to listen to our rural community. I am Jeremy Malin, a nurse practitioner providing primary care and street medicine to people experiencing homelessness here in Ukiah. I am here representing Adventist Health in Mendocino County this evening and want to express our deep gratitude for your support in protecting Medicare and Medicaid. These programs are the lifeblood of healthcare, especially here in our rural community where resources are already stretched thin. We are particularly concerned about the significant risks to Medicaid funding. Reductions would severely impact not just hospital access, but also vital primary care, mental health, addiction, and other essential services. We urgently need your continued advocacy. How can we, as a healthcare system and community, best support your efforts to safeguard these crucial programs for Mendocino County?
No, first of all, thank you for everything that you do. My wife is actually a nurse in Sonoma County at Kaiser. She works in the operating room. And we have not enough health resources throughout the entire North Coast. That is actually the biggest liability that we are concerned about, that we don't know what the Trump administration is going to do yet. But the way that it trickles down to Medi-Cal is about an $800 billion liability potential for the state of California that, frankly, we can't backfill if Trump goes after it. So we are advocating. We're doing everything that we can to push back on that. But then I'll also tell you about a piece of legislation that I've introduced this year in California that actually you all are supportive of, so thank you. It's AB 1460, and it's a very complicated federal program called the 340B program, in which, in order to be able to operate in Medicaid, pharmaceutical companies have to offer discounts for our clinics and our health systems. And what's been happening, and then that discount ends up passing back through to support those clinics so that they can provide services for folks who are underinsured, have no insurance, are undocumented, or just in clinics or communities where it's prohibitive for them to put those resources there. And what's been happening since the pandemic is the pharmaceutical companies have been putting restrictions on how many contract pharmacies can actually participate in this program. So what they've been saying is each of our clinic systems get to choose one pharmacy, and that's where it goes through. So if you are, for instance, in San Diego County, they have an entire clinic system that has 30 clinics, and they get to select one pharmacy for all 30 clinics. And if you want to utilize it, you have to drive all the way across the county to utilize it. It's depriving our local communities of resources that they desperately need, especially with this threat from the federal government. So our bill is very simple. It says you cannot put restrictions, particularly when you look at our rural community, on who can participate in this program. Our bill is supported by the health clinics, the hospitals, the UC system, Planned Parenthood, and it's being opposed as the #1 opposition bill for the pharmaceutical industry and Biocom. So I want to thank you all for supporting. It's going to be a fight. It'll be in committee in the next couple of weeks, but it's one of the ways that we felt like we could try to support our own health systems, even with the uncertainty of what was happening at the federal level.
Thanks, Chris. Let me just add in, again, thanking you for the vital community work that you do. Medicaid is in real trouble federally right now. And to sort of, some of this is technical and wonky, but to try to make it make sense, the House of Representatives, Republican majority in the House, passed a budget resolution that calls for levels of cuts that cannot be achieved without major cuts to Medicaid on the order of $880 billion. Now, if they did that, it would gut the federal health insurance program that 1/3 of Americans depend on for their health insurance. And that would have all kinds of broader effects on our entire community health clinic system. There would be collapses, there would be layoffs, there would be physicians and nurses and others that would have to be let go. It would crater the Indian Health Services system, which is so important in the northern part of our districts. And if you care about like nursing home care, Medicaid is the lifeblood of our nursing home system. And anyone with disabilities, physical or developmental, all of us have family members, neighbors, people we know with disabilities. 100% of them depend on Medicaid. And it goes even further than that, because in the state of California, we're a state that has taken the Medicaid expansion in order to bolster the Affordable Care Act. The marketplace covered California. And so you have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Californians that can now get discounted health insurance because of that Medicaid expansion. If it goes away, some of you will see your health premiums under covered California go up as much as 300%. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about those cuts that House Republicans have already set in motion. Now, what we don't know is how this plays with the Republicans in the Senate, who have just decided that, you know, they're afraid. There's been a huge backlash against this threat of Medicaid cuts, and thanks to everyone who has been writing letters and trying to really raise the roof about Medicaid, we've elevated it into the national conversation. Medicaid now has an 81% approval rating, favorability rating. That's incredible, because just a few months ago, you'd be lucky if you saw a 50% favorability rating. So the politics of Medicaid are heating up for Republicans, and Republican senators just decided, instead of kind of go down this path that House Republicans were leading them to, they're going to ignore the Senate parliamentarian and apparently just put their tax cuts on the national credit card, just run up the deficit and the debt with these Trump tax cuts. I don't think House Republicans are going to go along with that. So stay tuned. There's a huge fight between Republicans in the House and Senate that'll be playing out in the next few weeks. But Medicaid is not out of the woods, and certainly we should all be doing everything we can to fight for it.
What's up, Mayor?
How are you, sir? Hi. Thank you. Thank you for having us here. My name is Todd Lands. I'm the current mayor of the city of Cloverdale. Thank you for doing these town halls. This shotgun approach is tough, and I really appreciate it. So I'm sure everyone else in this room does as well. Congressman Huffman, I have been meeting with you, your staff, multiple other elected officials regarding the Potter Valley project. During these meetings, it has been made known that the removing of the Eel River dams without a viable solution to provide the region with safe and reliable water will create a devastating effect on hundreds of thousands of people. Sonoma Water's independent engineering report provided an alternative that is beneficial to the environment, the fish, and the humans altogether. And it was the cheapest, most efficient, and easiest to maintain on their list. But the ideals of the elected officials and the environmental groups will not allow this alternative to be considered because it leaves the dam in place. I have spoken with some of the people you mentioned earlier from PG&E, and they told me that the dam is actually seismically safe. Because if you're not looking at it from a 1 in 1,000 event, 1,000 year event, then that's what categorizes them as being unsafe. I don't think that that is a fair approach. Saying we'll get more water through the seasonal diversion is political wordsmithing. It means we'll get a lot of water during the wintertime when it's flooding, and there's no way to stop it because we're not allowed to put in these dams or reservoirs to help us keep the water. So during the summer times, we won't have any. That's the problem with this. The water supply has allowed hundreds of thousands of people to survive along the Russian River for over 100 years. Ranchers, farmers, and every other hardworking community member deserves better than what is being proposed. If this plan goes into effect, the people in this region that will actually be able to survive a collapse of our economy, job market and housing, and water supply for food and hygiene will be unsafe because of the inability to fight the fires. Fire chiefs have spoken out and said removing the dams and building the two-basin solution is a dangerous plan and will be a threat to the entire region by limiting the water supply. In a time of extreme weather and climate change, this plan takes away the one thing that can help keep people safe around us. You and other electeds have told me multiple times that you wanted to have meetings every month, but we haven't had those.
I met with you two weeks ago.
Excuse me?
I met with you 2 weeks ago.
You did?
Yeah.
And I said you and other electeds. That's
Okay.
not pointed at just you. I'm sorry for that. Yeah. Tonight, the constituents from Lake, Mendocino, Sonoma counties come together as communities, firefighters, elected officials, and property owners.
Yeah.
I ask you to be part of the solution and not part of the problem.
Hear, hear.
This has been going over for 30 years. I have an article from 30 years ago where you tried to make, or not you, state tried to make legislation to stop this. So,
Right, Mayor.
Assemblyman Rogers, thank you for not signing the MOU. I really appreciate you.
All right, thanks, Mayor. A couple things. We already talked quite a bit about this, and I explained that we've got an information problem, a sort of fact problem when it comes to debating this. You just heard about a study by the Sonoma Water Agency that allegedly identified, the preferred alternative of keeping the dams. That study was by a company called Macmillan in 2024, and it did look at one of the two dams, not both. It's been conflated into a study that endorses keeping both dams. It did not do that. It looked at one, and it looked at different configurations. It was just Cape Horn Dam, which is the downstream, so not the big one, Scott Dam. And it looked at different scenarios for how to achieve fish passage at Cape Horn. Now, since that study, the very agency that commissioned it, working with state and federal officials and other stakeholders, determined that the alternative you're talking about was not feasible. It would not achieve the objectives, and it was ruled out in favor of what we're trying to do right now. No one is going to let the water supply just vanish and go away, and it keeps being suggested that that is the case. It's not. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to let it happen. The Sonoma Water Agency is not going to let it happen. You could ask them about some of the stuff you're hearing. They would back me up on everything that I'm telling you. We have a good, viable way to protect our water supply and honor the interests of both the eel and the Russian River stakeholders in a way that will provide reliable diversions for decades to come. It's really smart to get behind that deal and support it, as I am doing, and it's really dangerous to politicize it and risk blowing it up in a way that could cost this region its water supply.
Representative Huffman and Assemblymember Rogers, what are you guys doing now to guarantee that school funding is or continues coming for people with disabilities?
Yeah.
My name is Valerio Baca, and I've been advocating together with my family for almost 20 years without achieving much of anything.
Yeah.
We need you to ensure that the public education is guaranteed for those individuals under the Individual with Disability Education Act idea.
Here, here.
Right now, districts are performing poorly. They retaliate against family members. They discriminate those individuals, and it's really, really tough because they act at their will. Yeah. There is nobody who supervises them. Mm-hmm. Even when we go to when we go to mediation, we don't get anywhere. Yeah. So we need you to guarantee that those individuals will have everything they need to succeed in life. Yep. Because right now, they are surviving.
Thank you.
But they must thrive.
Yeah.
Not only survive.
Sir, I really appreciate the question. I know that Assemblymember Rogers is going to have something to say about this because this issue is near and dear to him personally and politically. Let me just say that what you described is exactly right. We have a federal law that I think was a great law, the Individuals with Disability in Education Act, that gives a statutory federal right to everyone, regardless of their physical or developmental disabilities, to a quality public education. And when it was passed a few decades ago, there was a promise of 40% funding by the federal government. We have never come anywhere close to that 40% level. Today we're hovering around like 18 or 19%. And that's up from where we were just a few years ago. So ever since I came to Congress, this is my 13th year, this has been my #1 education priority. I have been leading the legislation called the Full Funding Bill, bipartisan support. So hey, we found something that we don't have to fight about across party lines. And the reason is because autism and other developmental disorders don't appreciate party differences. I have so many Republican colleagues that have family members with profound disabilities, and they are great champions to work with on this. So we just reintroduced the Full Funding Act this week. We have more bipartisan support than we have ever had before. We are building a strong coalition to get there. And even though that bill hasn't passed in these last 12 years of trying, it's created this vehicle for us to build that coalition. And we've been successful in lobbying the appropriators to keep plussing up special education, and we will keep doing that. Now, the reason that you had the difficulty in mediation that you described, and that's a real thing, is because schools are struggling to meet the federal mandate without the federal dollars. And it puts tremendous pressure on every school and school district in America. And so, yeah, they're not as forthcoming and cooperative on, some IEPs and some special needs situation. I'm a special needs parent too, okay? The best way, I think, to fix that, I think they want to do the right thing for special needs students, but we got to provide the federal dollars to let them do it. And just know that it is my very top education priority, and we'll keep fighting for it. But Chris, you've got the state side of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And good to see you again, sir. Hope you're doing well.
Congressman, I'm going to interrupt real quick to say, Congressman, we have room for 2 more questions.
Okay.
Yeah, and just really fast for folks who don't know my background, as the Congressman mentioned, it's a very personal issue for me. My mom founded a nonprofit 30 years ago and dedicated her life to helping developmentally delayed children under the age of 5 to receive the resources that they needed to be successful as they're moving into the education system. One of the things I mentioned at the outset is that just because funding goes away doesn't mean that California's values are going to change. And this is certainly one of those areas. When we look at threats to education coming down from cuts at the federal level, this is the #1 threat. Most of California's education, we fund. A lot of it's through property taxes. We've got Prop 98 that guarantees funding. But IDEA is what has guaranteed some of the funding for special needs students. And so we are actively talking about, as that goes away at the federal level, our values don't change as a state. We just need to make sure that we are taking care of our own as well, to make sure that that still is not just funded, but to the point it's been historically underfunded, and how do we make the system better?
Mr. Huffman, my name is Clark. I live here in Ukiah. My wife came here on Uniting for Ukraine. We understand that status adjustments have been paused, and for the time being, she can make no progress towards a green card. We also understand that she won't be subject to removal, but our lawyer is not sure if she'll be able to get her work permit renewed. Yeah, so she can't leave the country. She can't visit her family. We have no idea when we'll move forward on the green card process. We're scared that the policies are going to get worse, and we can't plan our lives. Can you speak to that?
Yes, and I am so sorry because I support you. I think everybody in this room supports you and your wife and your family. And I think most Americans feel very strongly that Ukraine is our democratic ally that needs our continued support against this terrible war of aggression. I don't know any other way to describe how this president is handling. I think it's just despicable. The fact that the way they treated President Zelensky in the White House, the way they have tried to turn us away from all of our European allies in the direction of Vladimir Putin, and upend a system of values and security that has worked for more than half a century in order to isolate the United States, turn our friends into enemies, and just abandon the brave people of Ukraine. So, look, I don't know what's going to happen in terms of visas and immigration complications. Sadly, I have to say you're probably not wrong to be worried about that right now. But just know that there are groups ready to fight for you and defend you in court. And my office, let me just invite you to be in close touch with my office, because I will raise bloody hell if they do anything to your wife on this issue. And I am confident that we will get this foreign policy back on the rails and back in support of democracies and against dictatorships.
Hi, thank you for coming. Probably everybody in this room wants to fight like hell, too. This is the time for us to do it. I'm from a little town, Willits, with Indivisible, and we're serious about taking the information that you get from DC and translating it into information that we can share with our neighbors, people who were not here tonight, who don't want to be. I'm kind of ashamed that none of our city council members from Willits are here. But anyway, how do we say, well, in Willits, we're losing our job care or our food bank? Or how do we translate it into some real facts that can help us?
Yeah, I can help you with that, and I'm sure the Assemblyman has resources too, but we're able to break down some of these cuts and proposals in a very specific way. I can certainly do it by my congressional district. I believe we have the ability to do it by county. Maybe working with the folks here at Mendocino County, we can even dial it down to the level of Willits. But you're absolutely right to flag child care. You're right to provide our hunger safety net. Food banks are getting hammered right now. And I can't imagine anything more cruel than some sort of a thought police exercise where we think it's woke to go after food banks and to go after Meals on Wheels and to go after veterans care. This is so deeply cruel and destructive, and we will get you all of the information that we can, and I'll come to Willits. How's that? Okay.
Yeah. And I will say, too, one of the things, there's a lot of trash on social media. I see it. But you do have elected officials from the local level all the way up who are putting out information pretty much every single day. I'll give you a really great example. A couple of weeks ago, we sent an opposition letter to a proposed PG&E rate increase that folks saw on social media, and they didn't realize that this was happening. So it was an opportunity for them to then engage, to share that with their neighbors, to take the information that we're putting out as we get it, to better inform themselves and the people around them, and then that helps to inform how they can fight that. And usually we'll include calls to action. Whether it's we'll go out and we'll do a protest and we'll talk about what we're protesting and what people can do to help with that as well, or just a substantive policy issue around we see this cut coming to food banks. we all need to rally and support. So quick plug to follow your local elected officials and your state and federal elected officials on social media. Not Twitter. We all did a mass exodus from Twitter last week. But Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, we put out pretty much every single day posts about the things that we are working on or issues that are important to the North Coast.
Last question.
Okay.
Have you saved a really good one for the end here?
I hope so.
Okay.
One of the things I haven't heard mentioned tonight, which is, I think, in all of us, our mind, is fascism.
Yeah.
And the fact that that is what we're dealing with, is how to stop fascism. And the other, just in terms of a word, I really get tired of when they talk about it being an administration. It's a regime.
Okay.
Clearly.
Yeah.
So I think we need to start naming what it is. And also, I know that people in here, I'm sure, want to know what is the most effective way for us to do the stopping and the protests. I mean, when are we talking about martial law? Because that's another thing that I know is on people's minds.
Yeah.
We can only go so far. So what can we do, and how can you be out of the box, both of you, in how we're dealing with a not normal situation?
Awesome. Chris, can I take the first swing? I'll let you back clean up.
Yep.
Thank you for that great question. So look, in terms of what you can do, showing up at town halls and being engaged like this is part of it. This matters. This is something. And I really want to thank you for that. You know, this citizen engagement at all levels of government is how we show the folks who would do bad things to our democracy that we're paying attention, that we're not overwhelmed, that we're not distracted and fighting with each other. We're actually coming together as Team America to stand up and fight for our democracy. So being here matters. Engaging with all of your contacts, all of your social networks, all of your friends and allies in other districts and other states, all of that matters. If you can show up at some rallies like this Day of Action we're having tomorrow, that matters. All of it is serving notice on the folks back in Washington that Americans are not going to stand idly by while this happens. Now, you talked about fascism, and you used that word. I don't consider that taboo at all. And I think we've just sort of got to get over this taboo that we're not allowed to ever compare anything to Hitler's Germany or talk about things using words like fascism. If you are a student of history at all, you had better be talking about that stuff right now. That this man is a fascist, that he is marching us down the path to dictatorship, unlike anything that we have ever seen. I did not want to be serving you in Congress during a rerun of 1930s Germany. I really didn't. But here's the good news. We got a chance to produce a different and better outcome than 1930s Germany. And so that's what this engagement is all about. I will just close, since I'm talking about the 1930s, I will just close with an Italian dissident from the 1930s as fascism was rising in Italy under Mussolini. A dissident by the name of Antonio Gramsci offered one of the greatest quotes, and I think it speaks to your question, what can we do? How should we think about this moment? And he said, we need pessimism of the intellect and fierce optimism of the will. And that, to me, continues to be like the North Star of where we are in this moment. Pessimism of the intellect, eyes wide open, because this stuff is real, and it's really happening, and we can't wish it away. We've got to face it for what it is. But optimism of the will, because we are not powerless to stop it.
And I mentioned before, part of that creep towards fascism relies on people feeling like they have no hope, that they have no outlet, no ability. I think sharing your individual and personal stories makes it much more difficult for people to turn a blind eye to what's happening, to tell the individual stories that we are seeing across the country makes it harder for people to just accept it as it's happening over there. And then the other one that I keep preaching to people is don't allow people like Elon Musk to be a meat shield for everybody else who is enabling the terrible behaviors, right? He's the richest man in the world. He doesn't care. But the members of Congress behind him that have abdicated their authority, whether it's on tariffs, that are going after Medicaid, they're the ones that are fearful. They're the ones that need to feel the heat from you and from their constituents. We all can talk about how much we hate Elon Musk. He doesn't care. He's never going to change. He has no reason to be. And if we only focus our fire there, we miss the actual pinch point of how we can make change and push back on this. So I know I've got plenty of anger and heat to bring to all of them. So I'm happy to do Elon and everybody in Congress who is enabling this to happen, and the president. And I know that you all do too, and I've really appreciated the conversation with folks today.
Thank you. All right, encore. All right, folks, this has been a great conversation. We will have more of them, but please join me in thanking my friend and partner, Assemblymember Chris Rogers. We'll see you next time.
I think Todd got here and had somebody else.